Hello everyone, and welcome. I'm Jordan at Afterburner Automation, and today we're going to get hands-on with the RPA Workspace in A360 in order to explore some of the features we'll be using throughout this learning track. Then, we'll use those features to build a simple bot and check the status of the bot execution. So let's jump in. We'll start by logging into the control room. Then, navigate to the RPA Workspace by clicking on Automation on the left sidebar. If you took the Getting Started with Automation 360 learning track, you should already be familiar with this, and you'll notice that I'm still using Community Edition. Those of you who have Enterprise Edition shouldn't have any trouble following along either, but you may see some additional features that aren't on my screen. Now that we're in the automation section of the control room, we can start a new bot and go over the details of the RPA Workspace. But before we do that, let's take a minute to do something new together. We know how to build a bot in this main bots folder, but over time there will be a lot of bots getting built and stored in the control room, and it will start to get fairly difficult to find them if they're all just loose in the bots folder. To avoid that issue, let's make a new subfolder called Citizen Developer under the bots folder. There's a number of ways to do that. But for now, let's do this by navigating to the Folders section on the left. Just to the right of the Bots folder, you'll see an icon that looks like a folder with a plus sign on it. Just a quick note for my Enterprise Edition folks out there, it's possible that you won't see this icon, and if so, that means that your control room administrator has removed your ability to perform this step, and that's okay. Once we've gotten through this step, you can feel free to create a new bot in any subfolder that you're allowed to use. But for those of us that do have access to create subfolders, let's click that icon to bring up the Create Folder screen. Here, we can go ahead and name our subfolder Citizen Developer, or any name that might help you find all the bots we'll be creating for this learning track. I'll also go ahead and put a description that tells me what this folder is for. Bots for Afterburner Automation's Citizen Developer track is good enough for me here. Then, finally, we can see in the path field below that we're putting this subfolder in the main bots folder. If we wanted to, we could click Choose to select a new location to store this folder, but for now, we'll skip that and click Create Folder. You'll notice if you look over at the Folders section on the left that it's automatically put us in our new Citizen Developer folder. In order to continue with this course, we need a new bot, but instead of using the Create New dropdown at the top right, let's go to the speedbar icons up here just above the Empty Files and Folders section and hover over the very first icon. You'll see that this is the icon for Create a Bot. Let's click that now. The Create Task Bot pop-up will appear, and so we'll need to come up with a name for this bot. It's a good idea to use a naming convention, or in other words, a standardized style of naming so that we can easily identify bots. For the rest of this track, I'm going to name bots starting with CD for Citizen Developer, then 01 to indicate that this is the first bot of this learning track. Finally, I'll put a dash and a short common name that describes what the bot does. I'm going to use this bot to show you how to use the prompt package, so I'll call it PromptBot. If you like, add a description in the optional description section, and then check the folder section to make sure you're in the Citizen Developer folder. If you're not, you can click Choose to the right, and then either search or browse for the correct folder, and then press Choose to select it. But now that we've named the bot and made sure it's in the correct location, we can click on Create and Edit in the top right. This will take us to the RPA Workspace, and we can verify that we're working on the correct bot by examining the name in the top left. Ours says CD01 PromptBot, which is what we named it. But if we wanted to make a change to that name, we can bring the mouse over to that name, and you'll see a little pencil icon appear. That means that we can edit this bot's name by clicking on it. Go ahead and click that now. You'll see that this brings us to the Edit Task Bot pop-up, which is just like the Create Task Bot pop-up we just used. You can use this to update the name, description, or folder location of your bot if needed. I'm happy with all of this though, so I'll just click Cancel. Before we start building this bot, Let's take a look at the workspace in more detail so that we know where everything is. We'll start by looking at the left sidebar over here, which is open to the Actions section. This is where you'll find all of the actions or commands that you can use to automate your work. The names that we see right now are actually called packages because each one of them is a package of actions or commands that have a common theme or target application. For instance, if I click on the caret next to Active Directory, you'll see that there are several different actions I can take, such as creating and deleting users. All of these actions are packaged up within the Active Directory package. Knowing about these terms will be important later on in your bot development career because you can add or remove packages or even update them to a more recent version if Automation Anywhere makes an update. To find a package or action, we can scroll through the list to see if we find what we're looking for, or we can use the search bar at the top to try and find them by keyword. For instance, let's say we need to automate against the SAP application. I can type SAP in the search bar, and we'll get a handful of options. The most likely candidate is the SAP package, and we can confirm that by hovering over the package name. It'll tell us that this package, quote, provides user actions for SAP screen. For now, I'll go ahead and click the X on the search bar to clear that search and show all of the actions again. This left sidebar has other options as well, such as variables, which you can see directly above the actions header. If we click Show to the right of that, we'll see a couple of default options here called Sample Number and Sample String. If you have Enterprise Edition, you might instead see a variable called Prompt Assignment. I won't be going into too much detail on variables in the Citizen Developer track, but I'll dedicate a whole course to it in the upcoming Junior Developer track. Variables can be used to store data that might change when your bot's running, as we'll see in a bit. For now though, I just need you to know where to find these variables so that you can get familiar with the RPA Workspace. The last section on this left sidebar is the Triggers section, which is below the Actions section. We can go ahead and click on Show next to that so that we can take a look here. This section is a lot like the Actions section, in that we can search for specific triggers within each trigger package. These are used to run your bot when some type of event happens, like when you receive an email or press a certain hotkey. I'll go into a little more detail in a course at the end of this learning track, so for now, let's make sure our Actions section is showing, as that's what we'll be using primarily. The last thing I want to show you before we start building this bot is what I call the speed bar at the top of the screen, just above the main workspace window. Here, you'll see a lot of common options that you might need while you're building a bot, like undo and redo, cut, copy, and paste, and so on. I'll be going over these in more details throughout this track and others, but for now, let's get to the fun stuff and start building our bot. We're going to build on what we learned in the Getting Started with Automation 360 course by again printing a message box to the screen. But this time, instead of saying hello world, we're going to use the prompt package to have the bot ask us our name and then tell us hello. To get to the prompt package, let's type prompt in the search bar underneath actions. You'll see that the prompt package appears and that we have a few options here. We want it to ask us our name, so we can drag the for value action over to the workspace. Over in the right sidebar, you'll see the prompt for value command options as well as its description at the top. Quote, prompts user for entering a value. That's exactly what we want our bot to do, but before we start filling this out, I want to show you a couple other useful things about the RPA Workspace. Let's start by looking at the top right of the main workspace window, where you'll see Flow, List, and Dual. These are the different views that A360 lets you use to look at your bot code. You can see that right now we're in Flow view, which is a lot like a process flow, in that it has different icons to show you each action, and arrows showing you the order of each action in your bot. This view can be really helpful for smaller bots or to get a high-level understanding of the order of operations in your bot, especially if you have conditions that can cause branching logic through if actions. I'll go over those in more detail in a later course in this track. Let's click on List so that we can take a look at another view we have. List is a lot more like traditional software development, where instead of graphical icons, there are lines of code written in order and indented when they're contained inside of other lines of code. I come from a traditional software development background, so this view is very natural to me, but I also prefer it because flow view can actually sometimes cause performance issues with your computer, especially if you have a very large bot. It also prints the line numbers to the left of each action, which is very helpful for finding and fixing errors. If you can't decide, you're in luck because A360 also has a dual mode where you can see both side by side. Again, because this is using flow view, you can experience performance issues with larger bots, but this view can be really helpful if you find benefits in both views. Like I said, I'm partial to list view, so I'll be using that for this course and for every other course in the Automation 360 training library. One last thing before we get back to our bot. At the top right of the screen, there are some options like save and cancel. If I click cancel, it'll ask if I want to leave this page, which I don't want to do because we'll lose our changes, so I'll click on Stay on Page. Save is pretty self-explanatory, as that'll save our work. Notice too that when we click Save, the Cancel button turns into the Close button. If we click on the Close button, it takes us back to the control room's automation section, and we can see our bot in the Files and Folders area. You'll also notice that there's a red triangle with an exclamation mark over the taskbot icon. This symbol means that our bot has errors that will prevent it from running. Let's click on the bot name to go back and find and fix those errors. An easy way to find errors is by using a feature called the Assistant that's on the top right just to the left of the Run button. The Assistant is basically a tool that tells you when there are errors in your bot and where they are. We can tell that the bot has errors because there's a dot next to the Assistant icon. If we click on the Assistant, another window appears which will tell us that we have an error with our prompt for value command on line 1. I can click on that error in the Assistant window and it'll automatically take us to that line and open up the command in the right sidebar. You'll also see that they have red triangles noting that we have errors with 3 separate fields that are required for this command. So let's fill out those fields, starting at the top with the window caption. This will be the header of the window that appears, so let's name it after our bot and call it CD01-promptbot. This will help us to set our window apart from any other windows. We want to get a name from the user, so for the message field, let's put something that makes it really clear, like type your first name into the field below. The last thing we need to do is assign the value we get from the prompt into a variable. Fortunately, we can use the default variables we saw earlier by clicking the Choose a Variable drop-down menu and selecting Sample String, or Prompt Assignment if you're using Enterprise Edition. Once we click off of this command or press Save, you'll see that the error gets cleared from the Assistant window and it tells us that we're good to go, so we can move on. Let's test our bot by clicking Run. If you didn't save first, don't worry, because when you click Run, it'll automatically save your bot code. The first time you run a bot, it can sometimes take a while to deploy to your computer, but we'll know it's running when we see the bot running window in the bottom right-hand side of the screen. That window shows you the name of the current task bot and what line of code it's currently running. If for some reason it just sits there for more than a minute or so, it may be that your bot agent file is corrupted, so you may need to uninstall the bot agent from your computer and reinstall it by following the same steps to connect to your machine that we followed in the Automation 360 installation and setup course. If you have Enterprise Edition and you don't have permission to do this, please contact your control room administrator for assistance. Anyway, once the bot kicks off, we'll pretty quickly get a pop-up window asking for our name, just like we told the bot to do. We can type our name in here and then press OK. But then the bot ends. Did it work? It's hard to tell. So let's finish up our bot. We want to show a message box that says hello to the person who entered their name. So let's add a message box action. I'm going to scroll down the list of actions to find the message box package. But this time, instead of dragging it over, I'm going to open it up by clicking the caret, and then I'm going to double click on the action itself. This is another way to add actions to your bot, but it'll always add the action after the currently highlighted line. If nothing's highlighted, then it puts the command at the last line of your bot. The message box options show up in the right-hand sidebar for us, so let's go ahead and set the title to CD01-PromptBot so that we know that this message box is from this bot. Then we'll add a message. We want it to say hello, so let's type hello and then a space. But how do we use the name we just got from our prompt for value command? You'll see to the right of this text box that there's an icon of an X in parentheses. If you hover over this icon, it'll tell you that this is to insert a value, which we can also do by pressing F2. The Insert a Value pop-up will appear, and we can use the Choose a Variable dropdown to use the same variable where we stored the name from the prompt, sample string. Click Yes, Insert, and you'll see that your variable shows up in the message field surrounded by $signs and highlighted so that you know this is a variable. Let's click Run again to try it out. We can go ahead and enter our name into the prompt, and then press OK. And you should get a message on the screen that says, "Hello, Jordan," except it should have whatever name you typed into the prompt. Great job! And that's it. Now you should be familiar enough with the RPA Workspace to build bots with me for the rest of this track. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. For more RPA training, check out the next video here, or watch everything in order right here. Subscribe to my channel for updates on new content, and become a patron to get access to personalized RPA support. But until next time, I'm Jordan at Afterburner Automation, and I hope this helps you build better bots.